Hey everyone, it's Jemima. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be giving you my top 5 tips on how to do that dreaded academic task, essay writing. So first off, why is essay writing so hard for dyslexics? Well, obviously we have a lot of trouble with spelling and putting our ideas into a written format. It can be a really slow and laborious process. It takes a lot more effort, and I guess I like to explain it a little bit like almost translating our ideas into a second language. By the time we actually get to do that, we almost forget our ideas and then we end up having nothing on the page or very little on the page in the specified time frame. Before we jump into my top 5 tips, the first question I would ask as both a student and maybe as a parent as well is, is that task 100% necessary to be completing? And if it is necessary, for curriculum and all that sort of thing, is it 100% necessary to produce that assessment in a written format? Does it really have to be an essay? Can instead I do an oral presentation to my teacher? Or perhaps I make a video like I'm doing right now? Or perhaps I do a mind map or a poster or something that's going to accurately display my knowledge of that topic rather than giving me a written essay that is probably going to display more of my weaknesses than my strengths. So that's sort of tip 0. That would be my first question as soon as I get that academic task. So once you and your parents have finally decided that yes, that task is 100% necessary and maybe yes, it has to be in a written format, my first tip is planning. Fairly obvious one, but do not skip over this. This is very important. Now, obviously when you're in, primary school and the first couple of years of secondary school, they really emphasize planning to you. They say, yeah kids, planning's great, you should spend some time on it. And then you get to, year 10, year 11, year 12 and they go, oh hold on, no. Planning's not cool anymore. We gotta do planning in 2 minutes or less. Absolutely ditch that advice. Planning is one of the most important steps for writing essays as a dyslexic student. We tend to struggle a lot with organising our thoughts and our ideas into a framework that we can understand and that our examiner can understand. And by removing that planning step, it won't fall into place. You're almost setting yourself up to fail. Now, what I would say about planning is don't do it the way that your teachers taught you to. Don't, go step-by-step dot points and try and write it out in a linear format, because we don't think like that. What I would suggest is to plan in mind maps or pictures. Do it in a way that really works for you and works for your brain, that will get your best ideas. So for me, if I try and write dot points and write it out, line by line, it's so linear and it's so constricting that I can't branch out and think of the really weird ideas that are going to impress the examiner. Start with your main core topic in the middle and then branch out from there. And then once you've, exhausted all the possibilities, then you color code them or you group them together based on paragraphs. So think outside the box and then bring it in to a normal person level. So tip number 2 is to not write sequentially. Now what that means is don't write in order. When I was in year 12, I had a lot of test anxiety around my English exam. And I was really struggling to finish the exam even with extra time. And so at that point I kind of had to go, hey, it's time to think of something different, think of a way that I could do this differently that is going to show my skills and bring out the best in my work. And so I worked with my teacher and we figured out that I would start trying to not write in a linear format. I would write, the start of my introduction, then I'd get an idea about my 3rd paragraph while I was writing the introduction. I'd go and write that idea down and then I might go up and do a bit of the 2nd paragraph and then go and finish the introduction, then write the 3rd paragraph ending and then write the conclusion and then join it all together. And if you're a parent watching or if you're a non-dyslexic watching, I know that sounds crazy, but to be honest, it was the only thing that could work for me. And yes, I had to spend time at the end going through and making my ideas then flow, but it meant that I could actually get my ideas out within the time frame while I was thinking about them. Otherwise, I think we just forget. I think that's the barrier, guys. I think we just forget our own ideas. Because that process is so laborious and slow and it's almost like translating into a language that you're not familiar with, by the time you do it, you forget it. So my advice is this: write what you are passionate about at the time. My third tip is to do all corrections at the end. Obviously, if you're writing in that non-linear format, things aren't always going to flow the way that it flows if you're writing in order. But we don't have 3 hours to write an essay, so if that's the way you can get the words out, absolutely do that. Just make sure that you make it flow at the end. You know, go through, do a bit of a pre-read, and pick up on all those mistakes. Now this also goes for spelling. You know, obviously if you're handwriting something and you don't have spell check, you're probably going to make a lot of spelling mistakes. Don't get caught up on those mistakes. I have a girl that I mentor at the moment, and when she writes, she, struggles with one word in terms of how to spell it, and she gets stuck on that word for ages. Just skip over it and come back. Because what that does is that it ends up disrupting all your ideas. Underline a word that perhaps you don't know how to spell, or it's one to look up in the dictionary later, and just come back to it at the end and fix it. So tip number 4 is to use speech to text. Now I've talked about speech to text in some of my other videos, but it really is a great tool for writing really long bits of text like essays. And if you are struggling to get your ideas out, make sure that you try and use a speech-to-text program, because then you can just speak them out as they come to you, and then you can edit it later. The microphone icon on your iPhone or iPad works really well, or just using Siri. Another really good app for an iPad or an iPhone is My Secretary. It's a free app, and it's kind of the only one I've come across lately that has a pretty good accuracy on it. Or there's, the old Dragon Speak. If you can't use speech to text, or you don't want to, that's totally fine. Strongly recommend using a computer though. Computers are great for obviously spell check, but they're also great for editing if you're not writing sequentially, because you can easily leave spaces between things. You can come back and add bits onto paragraphs. You can jump around the text any way that you like. They're really helpful for that. The other thing is that if you can't use a computer, then that's also fine, but would strongly recommend to number the paragraphs that you're writing at the time, just so that the teacher or the examiner can follow where you're writing if you're not writing sequentially. So all you do is, say you're writing the bit of the introduction, you just put a little 1 for paragraph 1, then you might leave a space and write on a second page and start writing paragraph 3, put a little 3 up in a circle. That will help you keep track of where you're writing as well, but also let the teacher know where your paragraphs are in your essay. So I hope these tips helped you guys out. If they did, leave a comment below and share your own essay tips. If you've got a few tips that you've developed over the years of writing essays, or maybe you're still a student and you've just figured out a way how to get those ideas onto the page, let everybody know. I really want this to be a community of sharing ideas, sharing tips and tricks and strategies so that everybody can use them. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.